Hey everybody, welcome back to your Jiu Jitsu and Travel podcast, Roll With It. On this episode, I got to sit down with Army veteran Sara Lee. She's also a blue belt in Jiu Jitsu, and her credentials are just very impressive, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. There was many laughs, and it was a great time to record this one, so enjoy. First and foremost, thank you for letting me crash here for the last couple of weeks before I bounce from the great country of Texas.
The Republic of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. But, man, so we met, we had a little cliche moment meeting in the lobby of a jiu-jitsu place. That was kind of cool. I don't know. My wife might be a little jealous.
Well, I mean, it wasn't the bar, but I mean, I guess it was literally like the jiu-jitsu bars.
Yeah.
So it sort of counts.
But let's just jump right into it and tell me, what you've been up to in the past 5 years. Do you know what your likes? I know you do a lot of lifting and shit in the garage. Thankfully not early in the fucking morning, but yeah.
Yeah, don't worry, no cleaning bane of plates before 5 a.m. here.
Right.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me, and really it's been such a pleasure to have you in my house for the last couple months. One of those blessings in disguise. Sometimes you don't really know what you need until you have it.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I wanted to say I was a little bit surprised, but not quite, at the fact that we're doing this episode literally the day before I leave. We've been living together this whole time.
I know. I very much need a calendar, pencil in time, or otherwise I rush it away.
Believe it, people. If you're listening, you want to get this girl on your show or something, that you best make an appointment from a year from today.
It's not that bad.
Well,
it might be that bad. Okay.
What if I had an extra month? How long would it have taken?
Probably 30 more days. Oh man, yeah. So the last 5 years, I guess, have been kind of crazy. So I recently just got out of the military and moved back down to Texas, which is technically my home state. Before that, I was in Oklahoma, and before that, North Carolina, and Texas before that, and then New York before that. So just kind of all over. I served the last 8 years, actually, as an officer in the United States Army in the Engineer Corps, and that was an adventure all of its own. And until, I would say the last year and a half was when I really finally gave myself the chance to dive into jiu-jitsu. And before that was a lot of Olympic lifting, some dabbling in CrossFit, just really any sort of athletic activity that kind of would fill that hole of, being a team sport athlete or an individual athlete, and having that drive to always have a goal and just keep moving forward.
And the bike stuff, you keep busting your ass on?
Oh, yeah. Mountain bike has been mountain biking is a labor of love.
A new addition?
A new addition. Just really something to keep me outside and really kind of just complement my practice in jiu-jitsu with maintaining cardio and satisfying my need to kind of always be adventuring.
And keep the injuries coming.
I know. Knock on wood. Mostly injury-free. One small spill over the handlebars, though. It'll take you a week off the mats, that's for sure.
I know you were hating that time. You mentioned Olympic lifting and some... You said CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, something very interesting about you is that you've mentioned you have some athletes you work with very closely with, special athletes. Mm-hmm. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I was living in Oklahoma, actually, I became kind of a gym rat before I started training jiu-jitsu, and I was coaching on top of my full-time job in the Army.
Right, because, it just wasn't enough, huh?
Yeah, I really have to pile it on, as you've noticed for sure.
Hurting little shitheads wasn't enough, so you said, fuck it, let me go do something else.
Yeah, so I started coaching CrossFit there, and from that kind of naturally evolved into taking on a few personal clients, and then finally having an opportunity at one of my friends, Chris Bussell, his gym, Southwest Barbell in Lawton, Oklahoma, to focus on coaching Olympic lifting and really diving deeper into that role as a one-on-one coach. So after I got out of the military, I needed to scale back that practice a little bit to accommodate, diving into a new profession, a large life change. But I still maintained, I think, about 5 athletes, and their goals range from general physical readiness, just maintaining a healthy lifestyle, to being a competitive, adaptive athlete, to just, doing everything you can to be the best version of yourself and maintain, the requirements of serving in the military versus, wanting to have personal goals such as like competing in Olympic lifting.
Nice. Yeah. That was very interesting when I first found out about that, or found out about that about you. Jesus Christ, what did I just say? Sorry, people. But packing's going crazy. So anyway, yeah, it was like it was pretty interesting because we talked briefly, and then we kind of chit chatted here and there when you weren't like footlocking me or something. So it was pretty interesting little things that kept coming up. I think it wasn't until I moved in with you that I found out that you were a West Pointer.
Guilty as charged. That's one of those facts that I don't know why, but I always kind of like bury it away.
Yeah, I'm not burying anything here. We don't bury anything here. If anything, I try to dig a little bit more. I told you I've been digging on you.
Stalking way back till like my first year on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one like Nokia flip phone photo. I saw that one too.
Good old freshman year at West Point.
Super glossy in the back too. Just kidding.
Oh, that's
Maybe
so
not.
Funny. Yeah, so I did. I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be in the military, but I was lucky enough in high school to have a mentor who was like, come here, like, punk, like, you need to go to college first. Maybe think about this college. And I was very young and impressionable.
Whoever that person was that called you a punk, I like them already.
He actually lives in Dallas. If you were here longer, I would introduce you to him. He's actually a really, really interesting human being, really good guy.
Right, because I wasn't here 3 months already, right?
I know.
I'm just going to keep digging in, okay?
I'm sorry.
You thought this was a friendly interview.
No, I knew I was ready for it. But yeah, so he kind of was like, hey, this is another option. And from there, we did a visit to the campus, and being the nerd that I am, I was like, oh, it looks just like Hogwarts. Platform 9 3/4, take me away. Except it wasn't quite as magical. So.
Well, I mean, and then here we go again with your persona. You did rugby there?
I did. I played rugby for 3.5 years. I joined second semester of my freshman year and never looked back. I was an endurance athlete before that, and, God graced me with an injury that put me in a different direction. So naturally I chose the elegant violence of rugby.
Right. And then you switched that on now to Jiu Jitsu.
Yes.
The gentle, not so gentle art.
Struggle cuddles.
Right. Yeah. So I have again, your resume is pretty filled with sports left and right. A lot of career-wise achievements as well. So being out in that platform, do you, in general, do you feel, I'll just say how it is, being a woman has hindered you or helped you?
I think that is an interesting question, especially I feel coming from the military, that's something that you get asked a lot as a woman, just coming from a male-dominated environment. It seems that there's the perception that you either, kind of adapt and assume like a very masculine role, or you are kind of a little too girly and then thought to be a little bit promiscuous, right? So it's a fine line. But in regards to whether that, hindered me or helped me, I think it was actually like very helpful and formative, because growing up in those environments per se, you have to learn to really carry your own and lead with competence and confidence rather than relying on something more superficial to get by in life.
So after, you saying that, to add to that, do you think it helped with giving you a tough skin out in the real world, like once you left that, you know, because I feel like in the military you have a lot of like regulations, stuff like that, that keeps everybody almost like in check.
Mm-hmm.
But once you leave that place, you know, I mean, it's happened to me, like living in a military base, it makes you very like sheltered to the civilian world, especially when you're in a different country. So for you leaving the military, you know, having those experiences and having to move past that and, you know, did it toughen you up, do you think, as far as how you're portrayed in the civilian world?
I think that when people find out that you are, you know, quote unquote, a veteran, it does, especially, you know, I hate to say it, but it's especially as a woman that you are a little tougher, you know, or a little rougher around the edges, I think is a better way to say it. And then when they get to know you and you're kind of just like really like laid back or just kind of happy-go-lucky, it's surprising. But, you know, in regards to toughening on a very individual level, I would say yes in some ways, but it also, I think, in the other hand, makes you a little bit more sensitive to feedback. Like you take, at least, I don't want to say you, but I know, at least for me, from certain people, and that's a very like selective group, that I will take things very personally. Like feedback and stuff is more critical, but then on the same hand, you can be a little bit more callous towards people you don't put in that immediate circle of growth.
Right, yeah.
So I guess it's more of like a filtering, like helpful in creating more of a filtering mechanism on how you shape your own personal development. But then it could go the other way too. People are just so different nowadays, you know.
Has it also provided you with the instinct of being more of a supportive towards other females, or more in competition? Because we see that a lot more now. We see that a lot more now. In especially, you know, I was just talking to other people on the show earlier in the week, and we were talking about, you know, how a lot of times women put these like chip on their shoulders and feel like everybody's against them and everybody's trying to compete against them. However, the truth is we're just doing that to ourselves, you know, like sometimes not even male against female, it's just
We're
female
our own
against
enemy.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that I really want to bring through this show, that it's not always male against female. It's females, we just have to get together and support each other and stop that competition so much. You know, so do you think being able to put yourself in that spot where you're confident in yourself, you're competent with what you're trying to achieve and things like that, does that take that away? Or do you still see other like females as, you can be real about it?
Oh no, I'll be completely candid about it. It's just it's such a funny evolution, and I truly believe that it has a lot to do with growth and maturity. So I'll be the first to admit that when I was in West Point and for the very early part of my military career, I was not a female supporter, right? And it was not so much that it was in competition, but it was that you work very hard to, you know, achieve things or to get access to things that normally women don't have access to. And then when you see women who kind of fulfill the stereotype of being like a little ditzy or just using sexuality to get ahead, it makes you really angry, right? It evokes that very negative emotion, right? And so it's not so much that it's necessarily that you're in competition with that other woman. It's that you see that woman as like taking away by not maintaining a standard that you have self-imposed, you know. And it took a lot of years to kind of get to the point where I am now, where I think differently, where I'm able to be more empathetic and see where that walk of life might be, even though that I don't personally agree with it, to be accepting of it and recognize that has nothing to do with me.
Right.
You know, and that's just something that I think you grow with over time. But now I'm a huge advocate, you know, for women standing together and supporting each other and finding ways to band together, because really that's the only way we make it.
Right. Especially in these sports. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a certain point on certain things, because in jiu-jitsu, we've been seeing the past couple of years, although women participation has increased drastically, especially since when I started. It has also put this big like division in women, whether you're either the pretty one that takes naked pictures with just gi tops to get sponsorships, or you're the one that looks like a fucking dude and you don't get the sponsorships, but you might still be a kick-ass, or you are the kick-ass, but you still don't get the sponsorships because of that specific I don't know, like that plays that, you know, those girls are put in. You know, how would you go about changing that?
So I really think the best way to change anything is to live by example, right? And so I'll be honest, and I think that sexualization in marketing is not something that will ever change. You know, and jiu-jitsu is not the sole, you know, expression of that trait. You know, that's across the board, right? You know, the ugly truth is that in a lot of ways, you know, sex sells. You know, and really, like, sponsorships, you know, they're not always about the competency of that athlete. It's about how can a company make a dollar, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's a perspective, it's a tactic, you know, but it's not the end all be all, you know. And when we get back to thinking about how do we make change, you know, and coming back to like the microcosm of jiu-jitsu, you know, it's living by example. You know, it's setting an example for the young women, you know, who are coming up in the sport now, you know, those kids programs, and seeing, you know, adult and, you know, younger youth athletes that aren't quite on that kid level anymore, you know, putting the effort in, striving to be competent, you know, and it really, like, I don't think we'll ever get around, you know, some people will always be judgmental about how other people look. You know, and if we stop fixating on that one thing and start looking at the bigger picture of, you know, hey, like, let's support each other in the sport, let's grow in the sport, you know, and be happy for the accomplishments of our teammates, as opposed to being like, oh, like, she only got that or he only got that, you know, because they look a certain way or something like that, or falling into that kind of almost, you know, like shame blaming or like victim mentality, like, why not me kind of thing. Like, come back to, as an individual, you know, what is within my control, what can I actually have an impact on, and really the only thing you can have an impact on is your own behavior, right? But your own behavior can be completely polarizing for positive or good, so let that be for the good, you know. And I think that's how we start to make change, is stay true to who you are, be authentic, and absolutely relentless in the pursuit of what you love. And if that is jiu-jitsu, then, you know, do it. But, you know, if people aren't about it, then just let them not be about it. Because eventually they'll either weed themselves out, or they'll kind of find a way along their path too.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the sermon that we got today from Sarah. I'm just kidding.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Right, yeah. There we go, TED Talk. So, where do you see yourself in the next 3 years?
In life, in jiu-jitsu,
general, like, what's your next goal? What do you want to, you know, you've tackled so much to now, and I mean, you're not as young as me, but you're still a young buck. So I'm kidding, I'm messing with you. But maybe
I use eye cream now. That's the season of life we're in.
But what's your next? What do you want to tackle next? I mean, you went from rugby to lifting to jiu-jitsu to God knows what in between.
Yeah, so really I'm in a rebuilding season of my life. I just came out of a very large transition period, you know, in pretty much every aspect I could imagine. And so now I'm just trying to root down and kind of settle in, and then see where it naturally evolves to. You know, it's a new career, it's a new academy, and really just kind of like a whole new perspective on how my life looks, you know. last year I was training 4 or 5 hours a day. You know, now I work 50 hours a week, and that's not realistic. And so it's like finding where it fits, you know. So I don't really know that I can look 3 years out right now. Right now I'm just trying to look till December, and then after that, you know, maybe 6 months after that, just very like sustainable short-term goals.
I think that's a very healthy way of doing things. You know, because it's the show, and, you know, I want to know what you might have going on. I have to ask that question. However, I very much appreciate that's a very fresh thought. You know, that's a very fresh idea that I haven't heard yet on the show, as far as looking forward, but not too far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you tend to forget that anxiety and depression live in the past and the future.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the closer you live to the now, the so much better. See, so, like, I know when we first met, it was like I understand this soul. I know where this
energy connection.
Yeah, like this is very familiar. I also felt that very familiar when you were choking me out. I was like, this feels very familiar too. Please let go.
Let the record state, she told me to do it.
I mean, I didn't say choke me or take my foot. I said, stop thinking and just go for something.
I just went for it, and that's what I went for.
I didn't think you were that much of a savage. I was like, all right.
It's okay. Josh Dietz didn't think that either until I put him in that bow and arrow yesterday.
Oh, is this a formal call out? Josh Dietz?
Pew pew.
Her and her weird noises. Anyway, so man, I really enjoyed that answer of you.
Thank you.
That's a very you answer too, but I hope other people that are listening can take that into perspective and try to see the message, like reading between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you know, I kind of inserted my thought in between the lines, but make your own idea, you know. Yeah, looking forward, not too forward. I like it. So when are you visiting though?
To Hawaii.
Is that past the 6 month?
No, so that'll probably be towards the end of the 6 months, maybe at that 5 month mark.
I'm just trying to rush you.
Funny thing about switching to the civilian world, paid time off is a real thing.
Can't just slip your leave form in there no more. Well, let me ask you then, any ideas on what you would like to see change in sports in general? Jiu-Jitsu, you know, or even, I don't like to say politics, because politics is meh. I don't like it. Guys, I studied political science like for so many years. I'm so over it now. But yeah.
So, man,
society.
That's such a tough question, and I know we kind of have mused over that before. You know, and at first, like, I thought maybe I was like, more like creating a more like physically holistic athlete, you know. But then I was like, Sarah, that's so silly. Like, you spend all this time thinking about mindset and personal development, you know. And ironically enough, I think culturally, it seems like we're trying to make a bigger shift to be more mindful. But that's what I would put an emphasis on, is taking that 360 approach to not only creating healthy athletes, but having that 360 approach to just development and life in general. Like, not negating the fact that your mindset is almost the most important, aside from your physical preparedness and the time you put in, you know, to your relationships and family. Like, if your mind isn't there, like, your body's not going to follow you. You know, and I think specifically in jiu-jitsu, that's something that I've really observed, is you see the people who are driven and can be mentally present, but then you see the people who are driven but can't control their mind. And there's a huge disparity between those two types of athletes. You know, and it's a really interesting thing, because one athlete they might perform the exact same, but the way that they're able to react to a loss or a win is drastically different.
Right, yeah. Doing faces over here and shit. So, let's get real quick to something else that I wanted to touch before, because I know you're busy bee. Not sure what you're about to go do now. Maybe, I don't know, start your own swim league or something.
No way.
But tell me a little bit about what you do on your day-to-day. How do you start your day? How do you go about your day to get yourself in the right mindset?
Oh gosh.
You know, I know we live together, but there's 2 wings to the house, and
Yeah.
you're very much Slytherin. I'm very much not.
I like to think of myself as a Ravenclaw.
Yeah, no, ma'am. That's my side. That's my wing. That's my aisle. You know.
Oh gosh.
Utah, your dog would agree with me.
Bless his heart.
Just so you know.
Special boy. Yeah. So, oh man, I have a really, I think,
I'll make it easy for you, right? So
profound
step
ability
1
to live in chaos.
Well, right, yeah. So, and I see that. Let's start with step 1. I know you enjoy your coffee.
Yeah.
So any coffee people out there listening, you can let me do a little plug. What's the Coffee Companion Instagram page? You can go and follow that one. She has a couple of those. By the way, I almost skipped over the one thing that caught me from this girl that I was like, I gotta have her on the show. Jesus, I almost forgot about it.
See, chaos. That's where it's
Exactly. You see, that's why my show's a little bit all over the place right now. And unbalanced. I don't appreciate this unbalance you're bringing right now. Usually you keep me very centered. Right now you're...
It's Friday the 13th.
In the full moon.
I know.
Jeez. So, your blog. The Wandering Barbella, right? So we have an Instagram and we have a page for that too as well.
Do.
What other Instagrams do you have?
So
the Badass Rugby Girl, and then no.
This sounds kind of silly for someone who has 3 Instagrams, but I actually really try to minimize my social media engagement.
Well, I've noticed you do. I wish you didn't hold back so much on your blog one though, because a lot of times you put out really, really interesting things on that. And I'm going to do what I don't usually do while I'm recording, but I'm going to try to pull one up.
Troll.
Yes, I'm going to pull one up. But tell me a little bit about that. How did that get started?
Yeah, so the blog I have is The Wandering Barbella. And that was just essentially a creative outlet that I needed for myself as part of my personal healing process after I got divorced 2 or 3 years ago, and that's how it was originally born. And from that, it's kind of transposed into really just being like a very candid snapshot of my thoughts on some pretty like personal issues, and then that migrated into wanting to create a women's workshop, which is how Gratitude and Grit was born in the heart of Lawton, Oklahoma 2 years ago.
Any idea when the next one's coming up?
The Gratitude and Grit workshop?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the hot topic of thought in my brain recently.
Mm-hmm.
So again, trying to reestablish myself and create a new, space and a new platform and kind of see where it fits into my life. It's been toying around. Is it going to stay as a workshop? Is it, maybe going to migrate to something like a podcast where I can have a bigger reach for both interview guests and then who that information is available to. So, truthfully, I'm not really sure how it's going to look. The goal is by probably April of 2020 to have something more grounded in that space. But the last thing I want to do is rush it and kind of take away from the quality and the message. I don't want it to become something it wasn't meant to be.
Right. Well, everything that's good and worth your time is going to take time.
Exactly.
That's something that I had to take a step away too from the show just to kind of figure out where I wanted it to go. So we started very much with just traveling. So if you haven't gone out there to listen to the first few episodes and you are thinking about traveling, go ahead and go and listen to them. We talk about everything you might want to think about. You know, how to travel, what to take, visas for different countries. There's so much information on there that's not always very clear online. But then there's only so much you can talk about before. It's kind of how I felt when I was traveling Europe. After a while, I stopped traveling Europe, and I decided
it all kind of looks the same.
Right. Everybody has that one old cathedral. Everybody has that one old tower. And I was like, you know, the first 10 I saw were like, man, this is beautiful. The 11th, I was like, oh, you're pretty too. And then by the 21th, I was like, you're just a fucking old rock. Okay, moving on.
No.
You know, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad. Sorry. But a little bit. You know, I just felt like,
yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah, like, man, I came all the way here. I don't know. And I think I did the mistake of reading a book before my travels. So I had this idea, you know, eat, pray, love.
Oh,
yeah, I did that. But so it filled my head with this idea that I was going to have this, like, I don't know, crazy life-changing moment where I was going to, I don't know. It was weird.
That's kind of like the folly of expectation, though. Right.
Setting yourself up for disappointment. God, that keeps going back up. But anyway, in a way, I did have that moment. However, when it happened, it's like I analyzed it and I thought, oh, this is a moment. And then I said, no, it can't be. There's going to be more out there. So I kind of like chucked it to the back pocket. Like, whatever. You know what I mean? Let's do the next trip. And now that I think about it, I always go back to that one trip. Because it was kind of life-changing in a way. And not life, but like I found myself sitting a lot of time. It was in a little town in Spain, so drinking beer at 12 in the afternoon. But yeah, anyway, I don't know, guys. Let's move on from that because where I really want to go to is, so I had been reading these posts without having a fucking clue who the writer was. And then I think we were home. I must have been in the room or something. And
I was at work.
Oh, yes,
and you texted me.
Right, yeah. Okay, so see, there you go. And I was like, wait, are you the writer of this? Like, what? How have I been, like, mingling with, especially because of the way you articulate stuff. Now, I'm going to talk about two posts. Your most recent one, because it's so out of, like, character for the other posts that I've read. But also, I feel like it was the most you. And then the one that really caught my attention was the skin deep post. So let's talk a little bit about your most recent one, the one that's more you. I feel like we'll go through that one pretty quick. And the reason I say it's the most you is because you literally posted, and I quote, I believe that we get a false sense of ease nowadays. We are surrounded by inputs that tell us success is easy, that happens overnight. This is bullshit. End quote, because the post continues. The reason I ended there because your explanation kind of comes right after that. But besides the post, what kind of life scenarios do you think that give you this idea?
Just the perspective in general.
Right.
So in my job now, I drive, maybe like a quarter of my day, and then I'm either in a clinic or a hospital, and I listen. I listen to a lot of things and a lot of people, and then I go to, Jiu Jitsu almost right after on days that I can make it. And again, I just listen. I spend all this time listening. And, when you just take a second to reflect on what you hear, it's amazing how common the themes are, and so much of it is I expect, or I deserve, or this thought that you should have more than what you have, and that what you have is not enough, right? Or that just because you did something for half a second means that you should be an expert right away, or you should receive accolades or have something handed to you, right? And this is not just in sport, you know, this is across the board. But really, I mean, that's just not the case, you know? But what you see now, and I'll be in the clinic and I'll literally just watch, and I'm guilty of it myself, but people are just so engaged with ads, TV, you know, social media, whatever kind of the venue is, even if it's just like a pamphlet sitting there of all this information, that it's like, hey, you know, this is right at your fingertips. So people, I think, get this idea that things are like Amazon Prime, right? It comes in 2 days. But that's not the case. You know, and you kind of touched on it at the beginning, you know, anything worth having takes time.
Right.
You know, but we forget that because we live in a digital age where I can have ice cream delivered to the trunk of my car at the touch of a button because I live in a metropolitan area.
Right.
But that's not the case, but it is such a toxic thought. You know,
and recently I saw actually an ad that talked about buying a car completely online. They send you a token.
Oh yeah, Carvana, and it's like a vending machine.
I didn't want to say the name. They're not paying for sponsorships here.
I take it back. Bleep it out.
I am gonna bleep it out because they don't pay me for their name to be on my show. But yeah, they send you a token, and then you can just go in like
Isn't that
a
bizarre?
fucking vending machine. Like, first of all, I'm huge on haggling. Like,
I'm not surprised.
I'm huge on it. I love it. Man, where was it? I didn't haggle hardly at all in Thailand, but I don't even know. Pretty much everywhere I go, there's a fucking vendor in the street. I'm gonna haggle you. There was one kid who one of my last trips in Mexico, he was selling a purse, and not for me, it was a gift. But there was one I really wanted, just based on design, and I was gonna purchase it from this lady that was there who was hardly trying to sell. And this kid came around. He's like, "What do you want? I got it for you." He's like, I don't know, 7 years old, maybe 10, not even 10.
Hustler.
Right. And he came around. He's like, "What do you want? I'll get it for you." And I was like, "Well, do you have that one that's on that wall? I want that one." He's like, "Give me a minute. I'll go find it. How much are you gonna pay me?" And I was like, "Bring it first, and then I'll talk about money." He literally hauls ass in this plaza. I was like, "Well, I don't think he's coming back." I'm walking around. I leave that post, and I'm like walking somewhere else at this point, and I don't know where.
That little kid probably found you, didn't he?
He came. He tugged my arm. He's like, "I got it," and raced it on my face, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like, "You know what? You tell me the price, and I'll give you exactly what you want, because you just ran. I don't know where the hell. He might have just gone home and told his nana, like, "Hey, can you sew this little bitch right now real quick?" But yeah. Anyway, buying a car there, like, that takes the whole fun out of it for me. Like, I mean, I have a car now, sure, but the fun part was getting the car I want for the price I want.
Yeah, but what's more fun than instant gratification nowadays? Let's be real.
Well,
I mean, we're all guilty of it.
I was gonna say, well, there's some things I do, like waiting for my new mics to arrive. I was like, no. What is the most expedited version of the expedited stuff?
That was me ordering the gi this afternoon. I was like, "Give me that 2-day shipping for your summer sale, thank you."
You know, I was actually thinking about that. I was pretty proud of you for waiting a couple months. I remember the first time we talked about you buying a gi, you actually made me buy 2 fucking gis. And then I asked you, "Where's your gi?" And you were like, "I didn't order it yet." And I was like, "You crapper. You made me spend my money." I'm kidding.
I waited. I waited.
You got a pretty cool one. I like that one. Again, I
actually got a different one than the one I showed you.
And see, you guys, like, this is what I'm telling you. Although she's a roommate, like, this is not a typical arrangement here. So, I mean, that kind of ties into your skin deep post. Do you remember that? Because that was a while back.
Well, man, I feel like I vaguely remember it, but I get, like, I don't know how to describe this. But when I get these thoughts, it's like a visual depiction of the guy from the Beautiful Mind movie, where he's got like strings connected to Post-it notes, and it's going in all these different directions, and he's like envisioning things coming off the wall. Like, I feel like that's how my thought spiral goes sometimes. So,
well, your skin deep, I remember it was very much like the one you just talked about as well, which talked about categorizing people in depending on social media and things like that. So
I do remember that now. Yeah.
So that's something that I'm kind of like huge on. You know, when I meet somebody, this is why I like to study people, because I meet you and sure, you're badass in person.
Stop.
But then, well, I'm not talking about you, silly. Jesus, look at this one getting all flattered and shit over here. But I meet somebody in person and I'm like, yeah, you're badass. Like, yeah, let's be friends. And then I add you on social media. But then on social media, all your postings, like all these like political hate stuff or just hateful stuff, negative things, you know. And this is something I try to practice. And it's very hard because we're very conditioned to always think anything that does not go with what we want or what we think is always negative. But I always try to see like the other person's point of view. Like, you know, whatever it is that you do, that's fine if that brings happiness to you. What's that lady that makes you clean out your closet?
Oh, Marie Kondo.
Yeah, there you go. If this does not bring happiness to you, let it go.
Be grateful.
Right.
Give it thanks.
There you go.
Pass it along.
However, I do think social media can be a big representation of us based on how we want people to see us. I feel like even though it's weird, right? Like, follow me on this, okay? It's going to be a little trippy. Okay. So
down the rabbit hole, here we go.
Yes, a little bit. How much time do we have? Let's see. We got plenty of time. All right. So people tend to post on social media what others want them to see, right? But what does that really speak about yourself? Can you read in between the lines of people who post those things and say, this is what they really are? Let's say I can't even think of something right now. Let's say I don't like booze or something, right? So I'm posting all these like anti-booze posts or whatever because I want people to think that I'm strongly against that, right? However, in real life,
you're like in the closet tying one off every day.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Or, you know, I've never really posted anything about this, but you might know what one of my like biggest pet peeves is when people are in a car. Do you want to tell the people that?
So she hates when you touch your phone while you drive, which is a very fair thing. It's very dangerous. You shouldn't text and drive. However, I know most of us do it anyways, but it's not safe. Number one pet peeve for my friend here.
So now I've never posted that out there, and I noticed that when you posted that, I automatically turned to my social media and I looked on my social media, both, right? Like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And I was like, what am I portraying? Like, what am I showing people now?
What is the story that you're telling the world? Sure. Right.
And what I did notice is that I keep some stuff very private. Like, I don't post a lot of like very personal things. And I hadn't realized that. I always felt like, you know, my wife will ask me like, hey, are you going to post this? I'm like, no. Like, I didn't think about it. Do you want me to? You know, that's usually how the conversation goes. Do you want me to do this? Because, well, I don't really know why. I just realized that when I saw that post of yours, that's why when I found out that it was you that was writing, I was like, holy shit, I want to ask her these things about it because of that. The person I very much portray on social media, I know for a fact that's not me 100% of the time. That's a portion of me. However, I know there's a lot of people out there who will post things on social media or portray themselves on social media as something that they are completely not them. So that's the reason why when I meet somebody, I like to look at their social media and then compare them to their now. So you're pretty much off your personal social media all the time, but I do think your blog represents very much what I see on the day-to-day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, well, it's kind of funny because my personal Instagram is really like my blog Instagram, and it's like kind of this strange hybrid of my life and little snippets for that. And then I have a Facebook because, you know, I was born in the 80s. but
Wait, you were?
yeah.
You sure there wasn't a 7 in front of it? No?
Positive.
Oh, Jesus. She just gave me this killer look.
Positive.
Hide your toes. Hide your necks.
But that's probably like my most personal social media, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I guess just specifically in regards to social media, that you could be anything you want to be. You know, it doesn't matter. I could post a picture, or I could create an account for my hedgehog, right? And then have, a hedgehog who has 1 million followers. But does that mean that my hedgehog is putting helpful information into the world or positive stimulus? No. It's just...
I mean, if you saw her in her videos, you'd say yes.
I know, Icebox is
bit.
pretty cool. But, it does, like, things like, it just doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter what, unless you're monetizing. Let me rephrase. Unless you're monetizing your account, for business, then it matters a little bit. But in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't. What matters is, are you being a good human being in what you put into the world across the board? Whether that's your personal presentation or how you interact with your loved ones and relationships, or, something as what might seem trivial, but, it's become very prominent, such as our social media and our public interactions.
So to end this on a neutral note, I'd like to know where you'd like to see the sport. And I'm not going to say 5 years like I've been asking everybody else.
I like how you go down the rabbit hole of like social media, blog, randomly back to jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Well, because I know you're busy, and I know we got to get going.
No, you're fine.
I'm being a little selfish, guys. We're heading out to a dinner for me. So
we're going away dinner.
So you don't have to tell them that. What if they're stalking me? What if they're trying to like...
Guys, she's leaving. She's moving. Follow her to Hawaii. I'm just kidding.
Don't.
I'm just kidding.
Not yet. But that sounded creepy.
I know. I did that on purpose since we were just watching Mindhunter.
I was going to say... I was really going to say... I was just about to... You need to stop watching those killer stuff. Not helping over here. Every time something comes up, I give you a little fun fact. Blah, 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 blah. Ted Bundy did this. You're like, what? Tell me more. But where would you like to see the sport in a couple years? Not you in the sport, but the sport in general.
So I've thought a lot about this question.
Good, because you had about 2 months to do it.
I know. So I've actually really thought about it. And where I think I would like to see the sport is more accessible to... I don't know the best way to say this, but for youth programs in underprivileged areas. Right. So I know that there's great programs out there. There's like Steve's Club and Boys and Girls Club that do a lot with those communities. But jiu-jitsu is one of the few things that I've personally found that have such a profound impact on my perspective of life. And to be able to make that accessible to, kids, youths, people who are just in general having a hard time, then I think that would be such a game changer. Because right now I think jiu-jitsu is such a niche sport in the United States that it's accessible only in small pockets. And there's nothing wrong with this, but the fact that it's an expensive activity, it doesn't make it inviting for people who might need it for aspects other than just wanting to compete or dive in, and just making that more accessible and having more education on the art and history versus like, hey, this is some facet of MMA, because it goes much deeper than that.
Yeah, I have found, I think in the past maybe 3-4 years, I have seen the true impact on the mental health that jiu-jitsu can really bring, as well as lifting, whether it's power or Olympic or whatever. I found that physical activity but especially those that bring some kind of aggression out. I mean, I'll be honest. I think it's keeping us away from the purge.
Oh my goodness.
A little bit.
You were giving me a hard time.
Just a little bit from it, because especially, and also joining the sexes, I believe it's showing us that although we always try to put the differences, women are this, men are this, but I think sports such as those really show us that there's more similarities in the way we deal with stress, or in the healthy way we could deal with stress and things like that. So yes, yeah, well, I agree with you.
I'm sure that there is an aspect of being able to release through physicality, but you mentioned powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and Jiu Jitsu. Those are 3 very technical activities. So when you're in practice of any of those, or those in combination, it requires you to be so present mentally while you're physically performing. Similar to yoga, where you are constantly breathing and thinking and moving through space and time.
And that's what I was going to bring to you next. I know you also dabble in yoga. Mm-hmm. Now, I dabble more in the meditation part of yoga than the actual contortions of yoga. But I do think that when I'm specifically lifting, that I find myself in the same headspace as I find myself when I'm simply just meditating.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
Yeah. So something I incorporated with my kids class, or my kids program back in Germany, was meditation. Before and after. It's especially, we talked about that, but during competition training, whenever I had them doing competition training, we always did meditation before and after that training, because they would tend to get a little bit more aggressive than usual. However, I felt that the whole thing put together is what really brought them going home, going straight to bed. Like, I would have parents messaging me every night, "Oh my God, it's 8 p.m. and these kids are asleep." And I'm like, I'm still at the gym, like, teaching adults now, but thanks. No, I totally loved it. But yeah, those 2 things, like, I don't know. And if anybody else wants to, like, try that out with their kids program, maybe, and then let me know how that works for you, because I'm really interested in knowing whether it was just me or me and my weird students, or if it was a good one.
Well, no, I've actually heard that some of, like, the more progressive schools are actually including meditation as part of, their curriculum, such as, like recess or nap time. Yeah,
we don't agree with nap time here.
No,
there's no such thing. But well, Sarah, it was a super deep pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate you sharing some of your thoughts. There's so much I want to ask you, but I know we got to go get some yum-yums.
I know, maybe we'll just have to do a follow-up.
Yeah, of course. So maybe this time will be, instead of people hearing, like, dogs walking around, they'll hear ocean waves.
I feel like that's likely the case. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor, and I love you so much and wish you the safest of travels.
Thanks.
Yeah.
See, that's me being sorry. We'll talk about it later off the air. But anyway, any quick shout outs? I know you have a lot of special people in your life besides me. You don't have to give me a shout out. It's my show. But I'd
like to thank my dog Odin. He's my Doberman. He's really my number one. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please continue to support my friend Eva. She has such a great message and such a great heart, and I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to sit down with her today. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you. And also, I like to remind everybody, if you want to support our veterans such as Sarah and many other veterans I've had on the show, please don't forget to go check out the WeDefyFoundation.org if you like to donate some money or just buy some merch. Every single dollar goes straight to the veterans. And you heard it. yourself from yet another veteran talking about how great jiu-jitsu is for the mental state of mind. So let's stop that count, the 22 a day, and let's start doing something now for them. So go look at the website, wedefyfoundation.org, and do your part.